So she made her way to the U.S. on this bridge, the Bridge of the Americas, to apply for asylum.
Special State of the Union coverage continues now. The economy is the topic for millions of Americans.
They're chanting things like no justice, no peace, say his name, Dante Wright, the things that you recognize in these kinds of marches that have become all too familiar in this country.
Jay, there's so many people who lined up overnight in the cold trying to get a seat inside the high court today.
If you're in the market for a house, you might have noticed that prices in your neighborhood are still high. Movement is just an automatic messaging between the brain and the body. You don't have to think about reaching right or left or stepping forward with your left or right foot.
Meanwhile, the state's been in the grips of a deadly and well-documented opioid epidemic, making moving here a hard sell.
The bipartisan infrastructure plan will make billions of dollars available to states across the country.
Our team here at the National Security Council and the White House are working at this very, very hard. We've not let up one bit, and we're still talking to our counterparts in the region about that, including the Israelis.
Adele, former President Donald Trump declaring that big win in South Carolina early on in the night, taking the stage.
I hope your anchor chair has a seatbelt, Del, because you're going to need to be strapped in watching this race for the next couple of days. And the reason is those mail-in ballots and drop ballots are going to take a while to process. Because of state law here in Pennsylvania, only 11 hours ago were counties across the state able to start even opening those ballots, matching signatures, processing the ballots, removing the privacy envelopes. It's a very labor-intensive process, which we witnessed firsthand, and it's going to take a lot of time. Even though some of those machines you can see on your screen right now can count up to 10,000 ballots per hour, they're not going to be doing that for a while. It takes a long time to process many of those mail-in ballots. So we could see a bit of a red mirage here, where many of the Republican-leaning same-day voters have their votes processed almost immediately, as they tend to vote in person. Many of those mail-in and dropped ballots tend to skew more Democratic, and 1.1 million of them, according to the Secretary of State here in Pennsylvania, have already been turned in ahead of today. That's ahead of today. We don't know how many were dropped off today alone. It could be up to 200,000 more. So certainly it's going to be a very long time before we actually have results, especially if it's close here in the Keystone State.
From the farms of Central California to the Rocky Hills of the Bay Area, this herd of more than 500 dairy and African boar goats is hard at work. They're an unconventional but effective tool to stop fires.
Well, we built a fence, I'd say probably about 5 acres. Looking at the brush and everything like that, it'll probably be a couple days here.
They clear away brush, eating it before it can become fuel for fires. And they eat a lot. A single 100-pound goat can chow down 12 pounds of green brush in a day. So do the math. There are about 560 adult and baby goats out here. By the end of today, they'll clear 6,700 pounds.
There's plenty of work in California.
These goats are just some of Mike Canaday's herds. At his Coalinga, California ranch, some 10,000 sheep and goats wait for their turn to ride the trailer to their latest deployment. Just the past couple of years, with wildfires intensifying, interest in large herds to cover vast stretches of land has his business booming.
There's some that the fire breaks that we cut with the goats stop the fire. When you can change people's lives in that way, that's an emotional thing that they don't have to go through, and it's just huge for us.
These goats can stretch their necks up to 7 feet, biting branches and low-lying leaves. They eat poison oak and can clear rocky cliffs, something other livestock can't do. And it's easier to control where the goats go to cut a fire break, unlike controlled burns, another method of removing wildfire fuel. All that's needed is a fence, a shepherd, and a couple of dogs.
All of this dead grass and brush around us is really fuel for a wildfire to burn. That's why hundreds of businesses, public agencies, even private property owners now all across the West are really turning to goats and goat herders, because for the goats, all of this is a buffet.
The fire break that the goats leave is much better than mowing or using herbicides.
Jeff Weiss is with the California Department of Transportation, which began to use just a handful of goats to reach rocky areas like bridges. It worked so well, they're now bringing in even larger herds on the sides of highways.
The fires are more intense. The fires actually can jump the highway. And even if they couldn't, if a fire starts on one side of the highway, it can go miles in one direction or the other, depending where the spark landed.
They're deploying ahead of what is likely to be a horrific wildfire season. The drought here is so bad, the risk level for the southwestern United States has been stuck at critical for weeks. In California, every county in the state is in moderate to exceptional drought. Exceptional is the highest level.
Even in non-drought years, we have fires, but in drought years, they're wicked and they cause a lot of damage.
A feast for goats, a life-saving tool for humans. It's the new reality in California. Lindsay Thies, Newsy, Fresno County.